Massive balance changes are coming in Clash Royale, and in this video I'm going to be explaining all of them, demonstrating new interactions after the changes, and playing some full games while I share my opinions. I am now a Supercell Super Creator, which means I have early access to new features such as balance changes, and I can give feedback directly to the Clash Royale team. So I'm asking all of you to please share your thoughts on these work in progress balance changes in the comments below, and I will make sure to pass on your feedback. Starting out, we have a rework to the Princess. Her deploy time is getting a 20% increase, which means it will be easier to react to her when placed at the bridge. But she's also getting a 40% decrease to her first hit speed, while receiving a 23% reduction in her hit frequency between attacks. This surprising rework aims to make it more fair for players with different latencies to control her, since she will be more reactable. This does also mean that she will be stronger on defense overall, since she now shoots faster and is able to switch between targets more effectively. The log is receiving a 50% crown tower damage nerf, which is quite a significant amount. This will affect its capability to chip down the opponent's tower throughout a match. Arrows will be receiving the same kind of nerf, with a 58% reduction to its crown tower damage as well. This means that log and even arrows will deal less tower damage than other spells like zap, which will be very noticeable. The team's reasoning behind this decision is to make incidental crown tower damage over time less of a factor when it comes to deciding the outcome of a game. The Electro Wizard is getting a 5% damage buff. This is actually huge because it will change some interactions, and he can now one-shot spirits of any kind. He'll be stronger on both defense and offense, making him a more viable support troop to use in your decks. Cannon has been strong in the meta for a long time, and it will be receiving a 6% damage nerf. This will actually result in some interactions being different with the card, and it will be less oppressive at DPSing down troops and big tanks on defense. It is currently the best building in the game, so I'm not too surprised to hear about this change. It's also important to note that this nerf will not be affecting the cannon card. Void is receiving a rework where its hit frequency between strikes is being reduced by 23%. This means that all 3 ticks will occur in a faster sequential manner. This is a rework because the Void will now be better at taking out troops in a quick fashion, allowing your pushes to break through more effectively. However, a faster hit frequency also means it will be easier to block with troops, so trying to snipe a building or a squishy troop will have more counterplay as well. Evo Snowball is getting a 33% buff to its slowdown duration, which means troops will now be slowed for another full second. From my testing, this change is actually quite noticeable, and it will be much stronger both on defense and offense, since troops being slowed for longer objectively means they will be less helpful at serving their purposes. Rage is getting a 50% nerf to its effect duration after a troop leaves its radius. Previously, the rage buff would last for up to 2 seconds when a troop left its area, but now it's only going to last for 1 second, meaning troops will be buffed a little less overall. It's worth noting that this will also affect the Evo Lumberjack's ghost, which stays alive when under the rage effect. Lastly, the Royal Chef is getting a 13% buff to its cooking time, meaning both the minimum and maximum time it takes to whip up a pancake will be decreased. This makes it more effective at getting those pancakes out and leveling troops up, whether it's unattended or defending a push at the same time. Alright, so let's talk a little bit about these balance changes. Let me know what you guys think. It's pretty interesting. For me personally, I think this is a pretty decent list of balance changes. You know, we have a sizable amount of cards that did need nerfs, that got nerfs. We had some cards that, interestingly enough, got buffed that some people might not have been thinking about, so maybe the meta will be shaken up a little bit overall. Objectively, I think this set of balances will be more beneficial to beatdown decks than cycle decks. The first thing that stood out to me the most was definitely the change to the log, where it literally just does 50% less crown tower damage. I mean, that's quite a significant amount. 50% is a lot. It only deals 29 damage at tournament level standard now on crown towers, so log is an integral part of cycle decks and just spell cycling in general, so I feel that this change will definitely be noticeable and felt, where sometimes if you can't break through with your win condition, spell cycling is your win con as an alternative, and that's just going to be nerfed overall. I think a lot of you guys, especially casual players, do love the log, and again, it's a crucial part of any cycle deck at all, so this will definitely be noticed. In tow with the arrows, which is also getting a similar change, crown tower damage 2, but I feel like this might not have been the correct nerf for the arrows, because I think the problem with arrows isn't necessarily their crown tower damage, but more so the capability of the arrows to just attack everything in a massive radius and just deal a lot of damage and destruction. You know, it takes out the firecracker, archers, goblin gang, minion horde. It just gets so much value, especially by itself. You don't even need to pair it with anything else, and so it's kind of just a catch-all card that can just take out troops. So I feel like the arrows might have needed a radius nerf more than a crown tower damage nerf, but I can understand why they chose to go with this, just to keep it in line with the log, I suppose. Same reasoning of balances. But those spell nerfs definitely stood out to me the most. We also have, I would say, the other most interesting one was the princess, where the aim of the princess change, like I said, was to make it more fair for players with different latencies, because apparently in North America it might be easier to react to a princess at the bridge compared to others. You know, we have people like Riley, pro players, who can react to it at the bridge, but then I would say the average person can't. And also the average person will not be living in America. So just overall, nerfing the princess's deploy time by 20% is quite a big amount. You know, it's going to be longer to get into the arena and consequentially worse as a win condition to be played. But at the same time, it's also getting a buff, so it's definitely a rework and not just a nerf. You know, having a faster first hit speed means it will objectively still attack at the same time as when it was placed down as before, I believe. It's just going to be more tricky to get it on the tower from the bridge. But also the hit frequency between strikes, that was definitely one that I noticed, because I feel like having that is honestly a pretty good buff to control swarms, and that is honestly pretty noticeable. So this is again more of a rework than a nerf for sure. I know maybe logbait players will be upset about the fact that Princess Bridge is getting a nerf, but I mean overall it's definitely still going to be used. Cannon stands out to me because it's definitely the best building in the meta right now, and definitely a crucial integral part of cycle deck. So Cannon getting nerfed is honestly kind of deserved. It was a long time coming, but at the same time it's just going to be more tricky to defend all these heavy beatdown pushes, and I think that will make it more tricky overall. So that's definitely something that stood out to me. Cannon is definitely by far again the strongest building in the meta right now, with the Evo cannon being used a lot as well with the recent buff it got. So definitely going to stand out. Maybe we'll see other buildings in the meta right now. And also Cannon Cart was not affected by this change, so you know, that's all fine and well. Overall, I would say we have some more buffs, and this overall objective, like I said, I think this is more of a beatdown favored set of balances compared to cycle, because we have a bunch of buffs to beatdown cards. We have the E-Wiz, which is definitely noticeable. You know, it can one-shot spirits now. In my testing, I think this was actually very effective. It can just take troops out quicker and more effectively, so that's definitely nice. We also have the Evo Snowball, which honestly is pretty strong now. I didn't think it would be that major, but in my testing with this card, it's definitely a pretty impactful change. And you know, the Evo Snowball just being a card that can slow stuff down very effectively, that's definitely going to be a nice buff to any Evo Snowball users. You know, this card's gotten a lot of buffs over time, I feel. It wasn't that strong on release, but maybe it'll be seen more, especially with the log being nerfed. Maybe Snowball will be more of a small spell used in different decks now. We also have the Royal Chef, which I personally did not like at all. I'll talk more about Tower Troops later, but the Chef getting a buff, I'm not sure about that one. And then we also have the Void, which I would say is objectively a net buff compared to a rework, or compared to a nerf, I guess, because it can just kill troops quicker. But again, you can void block with it. I was definitely noticing that in my playtesting too, so just the fact that you can void block stuff, it's more of a rework. But let's talk a bit about stuff that was missing. I think the biggest thing that was missing from these balance changes were probably a couple of Evos and the Rune Giant. Rune Giant definitely kind of reading the game at top ladder. I'm not sure about you guys and your trophy ranges, but Rune Giant is so strong, and it pairs so well with cards like Inferno Dragon and Mighty Miner especially, so it's just very scary. Especially Rune Giant and Inferno Dragon, like those Bridge Spam decks with Lumberjack 2 are just crazy. So I think Rune Giant mechanically definitely needs a nerf, and that was kind of missed from the balances. Other than that, I would say Evo Mega Knight, Evo Dark Goblin are so strong. You know, Dark Goblin got a nerf, but not the Evo, so just Infinite Poison cannot be a good thing, you know. I think Infinite Poison is just so broken, so that probably does need some kind of limit on that. And then Evo Mega Knight, I know a lot of guys hate Mega Knight in general. You guys probably dislike it, but even professional players at the top level think Evo Mega Knight's pretty oppressive. I think that card is just pretty strong, and objectively, just since P.E.K.K.A fell out of the meta, it's just been so dominant and definitely a strong choice. But lastly, we'll talk about Tower Troops. I think Tower Troops aren't very healthy for the game in general. I see a lot of people complaining about Dagger Duchess, where it got a slight buff and it's now used quite a lot. You know, if you're playing like Logbait, for example, you can just say goodbye to any kind of hopes of a nice push, because it's just so strong. Dagger Duchess being an option just shuts down decks like Logbait, and it's also just useless against beatdown, so it's just rock, paper, scissors. Same applies to Cannoneer. So strong versus beatdown, but objectively worse against cycle. I think, again, that's just overall kind of a bad concept game design wise for the game. That's just my opinion though. I know a lot of people are torn about tower troops, so I feel like we could have possibly seen a slight cannoneer nerf, maybe something to dagger duchess, I'm not sure, it just got buffed. But chef is something that scares me because chef is so strong when it's good in the meta, and that is honestly a bit concerning. So yeah, those are my overall thoughts on the balances. You guys can let me know again in the comments below what you guys think. These are work in progress balance changes, so they're not going to be applied right away. We'll be receiving feedback from the developers, and then we will be thinking about what happens from there. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this recap. Again, it's my first time doing this kind of video as a super creator, so let me know what you thought about my developer build content, testing out balances and early stuff. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.